welcome to The Full View. My name is Bongi Wazwane, coming to you live from Fairlands. This is where we just had the technical briefing by the Director General of the Department of Basic Education, Zinziswa Mani. A growing sector, he says, 24,000 schools, about 13.5 million learners in the Department of Basic Education, and says that around 467,000 educators. And you're looking at the class of 2024. This is a class that would have started grade 1 in 2013. They then, in grade 8, were hit by the COVID-19 pandemic, and at the same time, they then had to sit for their matric exams in 2024. Now, when you look at some of the unique circumstances of this particular class, they would have benefited a lot from the progression policies. At the same time, he says that, and that's the DG, that this is a class that cannot be compared with previous classes. Have a sort of the Director General saying that he says every year that a major problem for the department is dropout rate, but it is the failure and repetition rate, and he says that too high, especially for a country like ours in comparison to other countries as well. The issue of dropout rate still is a concern. The National Association of School Governing Bodies as well. This is something that they often talk about, and they say that, yes, you may not speak about the dropout rate as being one of probably the major concerns, but are you able to put systems in place that are tracking these particular learners properly? Do you know where they are? Because some of them started grade 1, but they cannot be accounted for in the system. And this is a problem that we often have each and every single year when we keep on listening to the technical report and speaking about the fact that the policy on progression has improved. But this is a thorny debate in South Africa, especially with some of the people who say that for them, the progression policy raises some serious questions, particularly about the quality of the results that a learner would have received. So you do have people who say that they are for this and others who say that they aren't. It's still a subject of much debate, but also the absentee rate. When you look at the fact that we were just at over 15% in 2017, when you look at the absentee rate of those who are sitting to write their matric exams, and now we're at around 2.6%. When it comes to the absentee rates. They say that for them, this is showing that there's a step in the right direction, but it's a concern that Umalusi has raised as well, that there are some learners that aren't sitting for some of their exams, whether sometimes they are not confident enough when it comes to some of the subjects that they potentially are writing on that day, or is it because they simply aren't showing up, because maybe there are other sort of circumstances that still need to be investigated. At the same time, the enrollment by gender once again shows that female learners are still more than male learners. And, listening to the department, they're saying that it seems that the boys are picking up a little later on, and there might be a need there to still pay special attention when it comes to this group of learners. There's a concern about the enrollment in business studies as well as mathematics. It seems that a number of learners are opting for maths literacy as opposed to pure maths, and that is yet another area of concern, and a slight increase as well when it comes to the number of progressed learners. You're looking at the fact that this is also a cohort that would have received extraordinary learner support program, and this program as well was also to try and assist them in order to be able to do better. And the DG is saying that this is because they are looking at the fact that it is a culmination of the work that would have been done by those who previously were working in the system, looking at the gaps and the loopholes, and they've now worked over time on what this particular learner support program is supposed to look like. At the same time, they talk about the use of data, that they say that they are now able to plan, to monitor, and to improve the systems. But when you look at this data, are they able to utilize it as effectively as possible in order to be able to monitor, to improve the systems, and to be able to track some of the learners and to deal with some of the issues that they need to be dealing with? And this is an issue that we need to be discussing even with a number of our experts this afternoon as we look at the quality of these particular results. At the same time, inclement weather conditions have also posed a serious challenge when it comes to the group of markers that we're gathering there to ensure that they actually put their ticks next to some of these, matric scripts, and at the same time then give that quality assurance that these results can go ahead. So they needed to factor in the storms, they needed to factor in heat waves, they needed to factor in quite a number of issues when it comes to inclement weather conditions. And interestingly enough, a different picture is emerging as far as the districts are concerned. 9 out of 10, when it comes to the top 10 performing districts, are actually at 90%. It's only one that's not. And the Director General there saying that it's showing that there is a little bit of health when it comes to some of the, the results. But the big question is, if you look at this class of 2024, this is a class, like we said earlier on, that many of them would have benefited from progression policies. Is this good? Is it bad? And it is one of the big questions that we are going to seek to try and answer this afternoon as we try to make sense of some of what we're seeing, because ultimately, when you listen to different voices in the education sector, they speak about the fact that it's not just about the pass rate that the minister announces tonight, but it is also about the quality. It is also about access to education. You think about children across the country. We've carried different stories here on SABC News where you find children are not able to get to school, either because a storm probably has caused serious damage to infrastructure. They're not able to find bridges to be able them to get to school, and the connection with other townships has now been severed. Some of those children would then have had to have schooling interrupted. How do you deal with some of those issues, particularly where access is concerned? At the same time, scholar transport issues in the Eastern Cape, those have seen some of the learners not being able to go to school in some of the, the areas there. So how much of that also becomes a challenge to some of the learners to be able to exercise their basic right to education? At the same time, you then are looking at a myriad of other challenges. Teachers will tell you about overcrowded classrooms that they themselves are still trying to grapple with. So if you then have all of these challenges and you're talking about a pass rate that has actually improved, how much of it is actually a true reflection of the South Africa today? You think about technical subjects, which are also a huge concern for the department as well, because they say that you actually do need more plumbers, you need electricians, but some of the learners simply aren't opting for some of these subjects. What's behind that? Is it because there isn't enough effort being put into some of these subjects to be able to assist some of these learners? These are some of the questions that the department, and even through the Director General, they're trying to grapple with right now in 2024 in order to be able to deal with some of the challenges and the unique set of challenges that this cohort of young people is in fact now, facing. And you think about matriculants who are going to be starting, their class 2025. They are also going to have their own set of unique circumstances. What will those be? So a lot of focus, of course, looking at the quality, looking at what does the road ahead look like for this particular sector. You may speak of improvements, but do these improvements signal a light at the end of the tunnel? These are some of the questions that we will answer when we are in conversation with Professor Merrimet Kalf, and we'll also speak to the Social Development Department as well. Remember, when we were getting that technical briefing, we saw that some of those learners who are relying on child support grants are in their numbers when it comes to the enrollments. But also you look at the different other forms of social grants that some of the learners are relying on. And just 2 days ago, the department sending a message of well wishes to some of those social grant recipients to say that they wish them well when it comes to their matric exams. They are also another group that faces their own set of unique circumstances, as we've seen in different stories that we've carried here on the channel as well. So certainly lots to talk about when it comes to this very issue of matric exams. It's not just about the pass rate that gets released tonight, but it is about mapping the road ahead for this department, especially if you're listening to the DG, who says that the president told them that it is important for them to ensure that more and more children start to register for pure maths, because that is also going to be yet another, signal that things are going well, and we're starting to see a number of learners who are becoming more comfortable, particularly when it comes to STEM subjects. So these are some of the issues that we will then be speaking about tonight with a various number of our guests who are going to be talking to us. Mfundo?
A very good afternoon. Thank you very much, Bongiwe. That's my colleague there, Bongiwe, who's out at Fairlands here in Johannesburg for us. We will certainly take you back, because that's where all the action will be this evening. But we shift to this. The National Senior Certificate holds social significance as it remains an important benchmark of educational achievement after 12 years of formal schooling and a critical indicator of the schooling system's performance. I'm joined by SABC News specialist researcher Zinziswa Mani just to take us through some of the data insofar as the matric class of 2024 is concerned. Zinziswa, good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us.
Afternoon, Fundo, and the viewers at home.
No, it's a pleasure to have you with us. Now, help us make sense of some of this data. Let's start with just the assessment bodies that we have. We have the DBE, we have the IEB, and we have Sakai. I just want us to look at the number of enrolled students that we would have for these, and exactly for some who might not even know the difference between a Sakai and an IEB. Just take us through this.
Okay, Fundo, these are the three assessment bodies where matric learners that are writing their matric exams. DBE is basic education, where majority of our learners in the public system are. So you can see it's over 800,000 learners who have set for matric exams this year. And then you have the IEB. The IEB is like the private institution where majority of the private scholars, they go to these IEB schools. And we have over 16,000 learners who set for matric exams. This is a bit more than last year. They had about 15,000, but they've had new schools introduced into the IEB system. Then you have Sakai. Sakai deals more with the online learning and specialized schools like the religious schools. So they are releasing their results 2 days after DBE and IEB are releasing their results, but they also have learners who set for the National Senior Certificate.
All right, and then we have a total of 904,429 that's set.
Yes.
And then we shift our focus now to the DBE matric pass rate, because in essence, this one has the highest number of registered learners. So let's look at the 5 past years of data, starting with 2019, which was at some point considered the highest we had ever attained under DBE. Just talk us through these.
So when in 2019, when the matric class of 2019 achieved 81.3, it was considered, but then COVID-19 came in 2020, and we saw a drop in that percentage. And in 2021, these were the difficult years of COVID-19. And then we saw a steady increase in 2022, and then the highest in 2023. This is in democratic South Africa, the highest matric class that achieved that number.
And interestingly enough, when we look at that 2023 class that attained that 82.9%, they would have been in grade 9 in 2020.
Yes. So
and we know that grade 9 is quite crucial, because that's the time when most of them would be choosing their subjects. So really they were at the height of COVID, at a very critical time in their own educational journey.
True. They were affected in grade 9 and grade 10. They only started having normal classes when they were in grade 11, which is also a very important class. So there was a lot of catching up for them to do in 2022 and 2023 for them to achieve this
and not to
remarkable
forget
mark.
that even with the DBE, they would be under-resourced. So if you're talking about the online learning, there was no online learning to speak of. They had to do rotational learning, where nevertheless you would have students that physically come to school. So most certainly these results were more than just impressive for that specific class. But of course we are waiting today the 2024 results from the minister a bit later on this evening. And then I want us to look now at the provincial breakdown. for the 2023 class as we build up to the 2024 results, starting with the Free State, which was the top performing. Now, Free State is quite unique, rural, but for the past 5 years, they have managed to remain at the top 3. Just talk us through the specific dynamics of the Free State and how it continues to attain such good marks.
No, the Free State has done remarkably well, considering in the past we used to see the more of the urban provinces at the top, your Western Cape, your Gauteng.
Yeah.
But in the past 5 years, they've been at the top. At some point, people thought it was the late NEC Tate Mehwe who was contributed to this. But even after his passing, last year we saw them go up. They still say that they expect that this year they will be number 1.
Let's see what happens this evening. And then we move to KwaZulu-Natal, second place.
Yes.
Quite surprising for many people when they attained the second place because they had been struggling for the longest time.
Yes.
And of course, KwaZulu-Natal is a vast province, so they've got a large number of learners that would have been registered even for 2023 matric results or exams.
That's
just talk us through the unique situation in KwaZulu-Natal.
That's very true, Fundo. KwaZulu-Natal is a mostly rural province, and what they have achieved is quite remarkable, and one of the top performing districts last year came from KwaZulu-Natal, Umkhanyakude. So we've seen the steady increase, which is good because majority of the learners in our schooling system, they come from KwaZulu-Natal. Even majority of the matric learners, they come from KwaZulu-Natal.
So it would be quite more difficult if you've got a larger cohort registered to actually get these kind of numbers. 86.4 in 2023, quite impressive. And then to the lowest, poorest performing Northern Cape. 75.8% in 2023. And another unique setting here, because the Northern Cape has the least amount of registered learners, or had the least amount for their matric exams, but got 75.8%. Talk to us about the Northern Cape.
Look, the Northern Cape is also a very vast province when you look at it. And it's a very disadvantaged province in terms of the rural setting it's in, and we've seen it at the bottom 3 in like the past 3 years. Last year it was number 9, 2022 it was number 8, 2021 it was number 8. So there's been a lot of issues coming from that province, mainly protest action, or in the past they had issues when it comes to like textbooks not being there on time and all of that. So these are some of the issues that the learners from this province have experienced. These are the challenges.
And then we move to the IEB pass rate in the past 5 years, and of course today they received their results. So just talk us through these, because they seem to have been steady at that 98% for the longest time, and we know that they would enjoy greater resources given that these are the private schools. Just talk us through these.
True, Fundo, as we know that IEB caters for private schools and learners that have more resources than your DBE resources. So they have been at the top. And when we look at the matric pass rate, the only difference mainly was also during the COVID years between 2020 and 2021, and they recovered again. But it also shows us a matured system in terms of they've reached the ceiling in terms of results and how they've been doing. They've been here at 98 steadily, no major difference. It's only small margin of difference between the years, the couple of years.
It does look as though the system is quite well supported and has matured, as you put it. And then granular look now at the 2024 IEB Matric pass rate. Those were the results released today.
Yes, at 3
Most of the students quite jovial today.
Yes.
Just talk us through these granular details from the degree entry to the diploma studies and even the endorsed certificate.
Yes, Mfundo. As we've said, we've seen a gradual increase. They've increased by a 0.01 increase this year. Last year it was 98.46. This year, 98.47. This is the highest pass rate recorded in the past 5 years. So they're doing quite well. And we've seen over the years, they have more learners that go and have entry to a degree study, which is a bachelor's pass, and then 7.56 have gotten a diploma's pass, and then we have those who've gotten the highest certificate which is just a pass and the endorsed certificate.
So what is the difference here? Because I'm sure a lot of people at home would want to distinguish between these two, that if this is the higher certificate level, some would have called this in my era the school leaving pass that one would have attained. So
Yes.
now endorsed certificate, what does that mean?
So endorsed pass learners are usually the special needs education, and they usually write five subjects instead of the 7 subjects
All
that
right.
are written by the
So they
the
would have
others.
attained an endorsement.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Zinziswa. It all makes sense today as we build up or continue to build up to the all-important announcement from the Minister of Basic Education. That is Zinziswa. She's specialist researcher for us here at the public broadcaster, Zinziswa Mani.